Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dojo, the series where I teach men and boys the skills necessary to survive in a gynocentric society. Have you ever been betrayed? Of course you have. Everybody has. Even worse is when you confront the betrayer only to have them refuse to accept accountability for their betrayal. When this happens, one of the common responses is to deflect to another issue that they have with you. This is because they hope that this tit-for-tat deflection will distract you from their betrayal and provide them some sort of plausible deniability. It's a form of mudslinging and absolutely unethical. Women often do this to justify cheating, but it's not just women who do this. Why do these people deflect? It's because they know that you are 100% right in your assessment. Moreover, this type of deflection is also an indication that their betrayal was premeditated and not a mistake. It doesn't matter if the relationship was a professional relationship, a friendship, or a romantic relationship. Even family members sometimes do this, especially spouses. Then what often happens is that the betrayer will disparage you to others and mischaracterize you as uncontrollably angry, hurt, jealous, or otherwise unstable. However, their only example is often the very fact that you're upset at their betrayal. To reiterate, it's important to note that not only women do this, but thirsty cuck blue-pilled men do this as well. This also includes purple-pilled power bottoms, which are the aforementioned cucks who cosplay as red-pilled men. And don't get it twisted. Even the manosphere suffers from epidemic levels of purple-pilled power bottoms. Additionally, this sort of deflection and disparagement is standard operating procedure for women in divorce and relationship breakups, as an unethical form of virtue signaling. You see this type of behavior more often with effeminate men, men who don't have healthy levels of masculinity. Remember, if the man walks like a duck and talks like a duck, the man may not actually be a duck. He might actually be a thirsty cuck. While this discussion is relevant to this series, it's not actually the subject of today's video. That said, I still want you to keep this information in mind because by part 3 of this 3-part series, its relevance should be obvious. Moving on. So how are women able to so effectively cheat in their relationships without being immediately caught? And why is it that the husband's best friend is often the one cheating with his wife, yet the husband is the last one to know? Well, it's pretty simple, and there are 2 reasons for it. First, the husband has a gynocentric blind spot when it comes to his wife. He trusts her on faith alone without ever occasionally verifying her loyalty and commitment. And this is a huge mistake. And I'll explain why. If you have a job, whether you work for someone else or you work for yourself, you double-check your work, or you have someone else double-check your work for you. The work is verified to ensure it's correct and accurate. Accountants do this for companies. It's called reconciliation. They reconcile the cash and the assets to ensure no mathematical mistakes, theft, or embezzlement has occurred. This is also how the FBI discovers and prosecutes white-collar crime. So if every successful profession in the world double-checks and verifies the accuracy of the information they receive or the work product they've created, why wouldn't a husband verify the loyalty and commitment of his wife? Just, something to think about. The second reason, and the subject of this video, is because the wife and the thirsty cuck having sex with her are compartmentalizing their relationship from the husband. However, the more the wife cheats, the greater the cognitive dissonance until the wife has 1 or more mental breakdowns. In the time I've worked in family law, I've discovered this to be one of the templates for marital breakdown. The wife becomes so irrational, the relationship becomes irreconcilable. Often, this is because she was cheating on her husband and then compartmentalizing her infidelity until her cognitive dissonance got so bad, she begins to suffer from depression, anxiety, or a form of PTSD. Then, eventually, this leads to 1 or more mental breakdowns. In this example, the husband often has little or no clue why his wife, who used to be relatively normal, over time has devolved into a complete basket case and is now unapproachable. All across the internet, we see stories like this one from Inc., which is 5 steps to becoming a master at compartmentalization and a calmer, more engaged leader. And all these articles have one thing in common. They promote the benefits of compartmentalization. You can even move on to Forbes and see 5 steps of compartmentalization, the secret behind successful entrepreneurs. As a young entrepreneur, I often get asked this question: how do you deal with blank? Insert word here. Pressure, people, balance, challenges, family, etc. What they're really asking is, how do you deal with all of these things all at once? It's a good question, one I've struggled with myself. In the past year, I saw my effectiveness increase significantly, while the challenges I needed to deal with were more dramatic than I had ever experienced. How did I deal with losing my stepfather unexpectedly? My mother falling down a flight of stairs a few weeks later. She is still on life support today. Being a father to a son diagnosed with autism, and running a company with extreme growing pains. The answer is compartmentalization. Psychology defines compartmentalization as a defense mechanism or a coping strategy, which doesn't impart a very good connotation. Simply put, it's how our minds deal with conflicting internal standpoints simultaneously. Some examples would be a doctor who is religious but has to separate her belief system from her practice at a women's health clinic. A man who leaves his office at 6 p.m. and refuses to think about work for the rest of the evening so he can enjoy his time with his family. Or, at its extreme, soldiers who need to file away the trauma of horrific events in their minds so they can continue operating in battle. Coping strategies are short-term solutions, and they have positive and negative aspects. You want to compartmentalize, but not push out. For instance, those soldiers I just mentioned, pushing out trauma works in combat, but once they come back to their regular lives, they often find those pushed-away memories coming back to haunt them, like in cases of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, according to Richard Nicastro, Ph.D., he states, how can someone who has loving connections with others, someone who values family and follows through on responsibilities, act in ways that completely undermine his/her own convictions? The person who acts out has become expert in momentarily shielding himself or herself from all that matters. To have one foot in the world of love and responsibilities, and the other in the world of secretive escapism. A barrier must be erected, a barrier that walls you off from what grounds you, a barrier that allows you to momentarily forget the things you deeply care about. In order to escape into fantasy and/or acting out, we must cut the cords to our ordinary life. According to Wikipedia, compartmentalization is a subconscious psychological defense mechanism used to avoid cognitive dissonance, or the mental discomfort and anxiety caused by a person's having conflicting values, cognitions, emotions, and beliefs within themselves. Compartmentalization allows these conflicting ideas to coexist by inhibiting direct or explicit acknowledgement and interaction between separate compartmentalized self-states. And cognitive dissonance is defined by Wikipedia as, in the field of psychology, cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort or psychological stress experienced by a person who holds 2 or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values. This discomfort is triggered by a situation in which a person's belief clashes with new evidence perceived by the person. When confronted with facts that contradict beliefs, ideals, and values, people will try to find a way to resolve the contradiction to reduce their discomfort. And according to Psychology Today, in order for our brains to make sense of contradictory information, we usually do one of the following. Number 1, choose to ignore the conflicting information. Number 2, double down and commit even further to our beliefs. Number 3, avoid exposure to contradictory information. Number 4, project our feelings of overwhelm onto others. In other words, gaslighting. Number 5, absorb the contradictory information and change our existing beliefs. In other words, take the red pill. Number 6, accept the contradictory information as it is and accept holding 2 different beliefs. Now, according to daviddenniston.com, there are 7 signs that you're exhibiting cognitive dissonance. Sign 1 is squeamishness or feeling uncomfortable. Without a doubt, feeling squeamish, the uncomfortable feeling in the pit of your stomach, is a sure sign that you may be dealing with cognitive dissonance. Number 2, avoidance, specifically avoiding conflict. Some of us don't like confrontation. We hate it. When we come to a tough crossroads, we choose the path of least resistance. Cognitive dissonance comes into play here too. Number 3, ignoring the facts. In other words, do as I say, not as I do. Number 4, talking yourself off the ledge. In other words, rationalizing irrational behavior. Another sign that you may be experiencing cognitive dissonance is the rationalization chatter that you are having with yourself. In the manosphere, when women do this, we call it the rationalization hamster, but men are just as guilty of this as well. Number 5, deer eyes, or the fear of missing out. Another common sign of cognitive dissonance is what I call deer eyes. Essentially, your eyes get big and wide. You get really super excited that you follow the herd. Some folks follow others like them, and it typically involves money. Number 6, Homer Doe syndrome, in other words, shame. In our previous signs, they were related to what we may be encountering as we are battling cognitive dissonance. I think the after effects are actually much more compounding and more felt. Just imagine when you did something that you said you weren't going to do, the shame that you may feel. After making a poor decision that went against a belief and you rationalized it, you may be struggling with the anguish of your decision. You may feel remorse or even shame. And then finally, number 7, I've messed up. In other words, the after effects and the guilt feeling. This, of course, leads us to a related sign, that nagging feeling of guilt. The I messed this up or I should have ... syndrome. Here's the thing. Across the manosphere, everyone talks about what it is to be red-pilled versus what it means to be blue-pilled. While many people mischaracterize this analogy to fit their own needs and sometimes ulterior motives, the movie The Matrix, where this analogy originates, the blue pill is living the comfortable lie. The red pill is accepting the often brutal, ugly truth, regardless of the discomfort or the pain it brings. Yet, too often, when people are told the truth, accompanied by independently verifiable facts and confirmed by their own observable reality, their cognitive dissonance prevents them from accepting it. No one wants to think their spouse is unfaithful. No one wants to think their close friend betrayed them. No one wants to think they judged a situation or a person close to them incorrectly. No global warming believer wants to think it's a lie. No feminist wants to think that women are more legally and socially privileged than men. And no minority wants to accept that there is a racial war against white people. And no one wants to think that Trump supporters and supporters of the United States Constitution are victims of national origin discrimination in violation of federal law. And no illegal immigration supporter wants to think they're advocating a federal crime spree that hurts innocent Americans. Yet, when we don't verify the trust, loyalty, and commitment of those around us, we are setting ourselves up to be taken advantage of, victimized, emotionally abused, or conned out of everything we work so hard to create. I'm not saying that everybody should be paranoid, just the opposite. I'm saying trust those who've earned it, but occasionally verify they're still trustworthy. And if someone in your life is found to have verifiably betrayed you or has attempted to manipulate you, get away from them and cut ties immediately. This is because even if you aren't suffering the consequences of their betrayal yet, eventually you will. I'm DDJ, and this is your dose of misandry today.